All right, everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce to you two very good friends.
Better there?
Let me introduce you first. These are two good friends of mine. This is Bella and Russell with What's the Deal with Real Robot. Welcome to Anime Lockdown. You're on.
We're on. Okay. Oh wow, we're doing this. We're here. We're
we
having a panel. Hey Russell, introduce us.
Oh, hello, and welcome to a Rocketo Punchy panel. Oh,
that's it.
Okay.
You nailed it. I'm proud of you. Good job. That's the intro. So, welcome to a Rocketo Punchy panel. We're Bella Blondo and Russell Alterman, the hosts of Rocketo Punchy. It's an anime podcast, the only anime podcast that matters. And today we'll be talking about what's the deal with Real Robot. That sentence didn't make any sense. It's a panel about giant robots and the sad boys that pilot them. Do you like robots? Do you like emotional trauma? Then this is the panel for you. Next slide. Let's do it. I'm Bella Blondo. I'm an associate editor at thegamer.com. That means I edit a bunch of writing and I review a bunch of games. That's basically what I do. And that's basically it. I co-created the Rocketo Punchy podcast, but it's really just become an amalgamous beast of Russell and I's energy, along with our other host, who we are forever ashamed of for not joining us. Russell, who are you?
Hey, I'm Russell. I'm pretty much just some guy, but I also am the co-creator of the Rocketo Punchy podcast and quite enjoying it. And yes, this picture is my usual mood.
That's accurate.
It is accurate.
Yeah, he very much just every time I open my mouth and say something, he makes that face. And even though I've never actually recorded with him in person, I promise you that's the face he makes whenever I talk or type
it's 100%
anything.
My face.
Whenever I think anything. All right, next slide. Let's do this. So, wait a second now. Robots, real robots. What's the deal with real robot? Robots aren't real. That's cartoon stuff for babies. Look, let me explain. Real robot is a catch-all term that's often used to describe grittier mech anime. That's a bit of a, disingenuous sort of encapsulation of it all, but that's basically what it is. Real Robot is about trauma. It's about the horrors of war. It's about the grounded day-to-day life of being in a universe in which mechs exist and are just kind of like everyday tools. It's not for babies. It's for grown-ups. It's for big kids. And if you're a baby watching this, get out. Russell, what do you have to say?
You're fine. If you're a baby, you're already here. It's good.
Well, if you're a baby, you're already here.
Transportation.
Look, we need the views. We need the exposure. If you're a baby, go ahead and watch this panel. We don't care. So, Russell, what do you have to add about Real Robot? Do you have anything to kind of expand on that? Is like what it is as a concept?
Yeah, Real Robot also tends to, like you said, it is a catch-all term, but it also kind of refers to the robots themselves. Which are we doing that next slide or forget?
Just go for it. No, just go for it. Just
right.
Keep going.
Real robots also tend to be more grounded in reality. They tend to be a bit clunkier, more mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
Think more your basic Gundams or your Armored Trooper Bottoms.
Your Zaku's, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
your robots that don't do things that say, hey, you can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Real Robot anime, I think Russell put it very succinctly, is that the robots are a little more realistic. There's a lot more thought and put into how they move. So if you've seen Aliens, which if you haven't, what are you even doing? Think about the power loader that Ripley pilots. That's basically what I would consider to be a Hollywood example of Real Robot. Or Edge of Tomorrow is sort of a Real Robot sort of thing. Or, Live, Die, Repeat, depending on what you want to call that. Tom Cruise.
If you can see it having moving pistons and it moves in a deliberate mechanical fashion, it's Real Robot.
Yeah, basically. And I also want to say the little slide there says Anime Janai. That's the third opening or the first opening for Mobile Suit Double Zeta Gundam. And it's basically a song about how this was not anime. It was real. It was real human drama. It's not. You can see the cartoon humans with very cartoon proportions on the slide, but I think that encapsulates the spirit behind a lot of Real Robot in that it's a little more serious.
The realness is in our hearts.
Yeah, it's like a Burger King Big Kids meal, but anime. Let's go on over to the next slide. So, in the beginning, Real Robot rose is like a response to a genre, but to go back to that, to go back to talking about the birth of Real Robot, we have to give you a little primer of like how mech anime started. Yes, we realize there's a mech panel tomorrow. We just came first. So in the beginning, I would consider Gigantor as the first really big mech show. There were probably some manga with mechs in them that y'all in the chat that I'm not looking at are going to be very upset at me for not mentioning. But for our purposes, Gigantor is the first big mech show. It was about this little lad. He controlled a robot with a remote control. The robot was originally built for use by the Nazi army, and then the little boy got the controller, and then he fought big robots and monsters with it. It's a pretty cool show. It was kind of heavy. It sort of dealt with themes about war. It sort of dealt with like pretty violent stuff at times. But for the most part, it was like little kid wish fulfillment, right?
Which, at the end of the day, a lot of robot stuff ends up being until you start hitting that real robot barrier.
Absolutely.
Like, robots are, and for the longest time have been, what like Super Sentai ended up being. It's stuff to look cool, sell toys, say, hey, get the kids to watch this. That's what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing, I think Gigantor really, for all intents and purposes, you look at that design, and I don't know about you, but I immediately want to build a model kit. I'm suddenly just overcome. It's like Mind Break, except the Mind Break is I want to spend money on model kits. So really, really great design. But that gave birth to the next slide. So you should cue that. Let's do it. So super robots. They're like robots, but they're more super. So it's another catch-all term, right? Like Russell put, super robot is sort of a genre, subgenre, subcategory. I don't know what words are. It's a subcategory of mech anime.
Classification?
Subclass. It's a subhuman genre. That's what super
no,
robot
like
is.
that.
So super robot.
Supers are the expansion of Gigantor in a way. They're big, they're bright, they're colorful, they are go to the shelf, buy this now. They almost appear to be realistic, but they do things that you and move in ways that you feel like they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Such as, again, if you've ever watched Mazinger in any capacity, Mazinger does not move like any mechanical being or thing should ever move.
Yeah, absolutely. Mazinger is very much the spirit of Super Robot in that it's basically just a big man. It's just a big old dude. It's just a big old chungus. That's what Mazinger is.
We're reaching a little back on these memes, but yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I'm not hip with the kids. What are the kids into now? TikTok? I don't know. So
hopefully still rocket punches because that's Mazinger. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, rocket punch. That's a good example. So Mazinger is probably most famous for its rocket punch, a raketo punchy, if you will. I wonder where we got our podcast name.
Don't you call me out like this.
I would never call you out, ever.
Super robots also have this lovely little thing where they are usually powered by something ridiculous or not real.
Yeah.
Like Mazinger is powered by photon energy. I remember the mechs in Code Geass. I think they're powered by Sakuradite, is what it's called.
Sure.
Which
it's
are just big
unobtainium.
pink cubes that spin and make you go fast. I don't know.
Yeah. That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing, though, if you think about Code Geass, which we won't talk about too much in this panel because, whatever.
You know.
But Code Geass, despite its super, super gritty geopolitical themes, is very much a super robot show. Some people classify that as real robot, but the mechs are not necessarily tools,
it moves
as it
up.
were. It's weird. It's weird.
I'd argue if it's that, it starts out with like the Glasgow units, which are those purple ones, which are very kind of like Vodumsy. And then it goes to Lancelot and beyond where everything's doing spin kicks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think two other things that are worth mentioning with these kind of super robot narratives. The moral messages are usually pretty uncomplicated. It's pretty much the hot-blooded good boy will defeat the cold-blooded bad man. And the robot, like you said, comes from sort of an almost mystical place at times. And it's usually the invention of some mad scientist, or it's something that was buried under the ground that was unearthed. It's some sort of superhero origin story. I think comparing super robots to superheroes would have been a much more useful thing for me to do up front. But I'm dumb.
You're not
Anyway,
wrong. They're usually piloted by very good boys who do very large anime speeches and screams.
yeah, and
So,
if they're
like, guy from Gao
passionate,
Gar as an example. Although, yeah.
yeah. Speaking of Gao Gar, what are some examples in the next slide? See what I did there?
Yeah, right.
Of super robot anime. Here are some of the ones I just came up with off the top of my head. But Russell, what are some of your favorites? Like, what are some of your favorite personal super robot shows?
I mean, these are all great examples. An example, if you want to talk super robots, Gurren Lagann is great. As an extension of that, in a way, last year Promare came out, and that just gets nutty.
Yeah, Promare is super
nutty.
robot.
Promare's very nutty.
Good.
Gao Gar is gorgeous and beautiful and just hot-blooded.
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
a large fan, despite its failings, of G Gundam. G Gundam always makes me happy because scream at the man that you're going to poke him with your finger and it's your whole hand is very fun.
G Gundam does not have any failings. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen G
I
Gundam.
love Space Saguaro Cactus Colony. That is also
God.
a sombrero.
That's the one with the very cool and normal. It's Neo Mexico, right? That's a thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So no, those are good examples. I think my favorite
Neo America totally isn't shaped like a star with a Statue of Liberty laser cannon. No, not at all. Totally normal.
Absolutely a normal thing to do.
When
normal
we say
and
ridiculous
cool.
is what super robots are.
Yeah.
Like, there's an old super robot show called Combatler V that I watched. Combatler is another one of your, like, big robot piloted by 5 people, and on the fly they can't defeat some enemy. It's powered by, I think, super magnetism, I think is what it was. And on the fly they're just like, we're gonna make a super magnetic yo-yo and kill this giant monster. And I'm like, okay.
That makes sense.
But it's cool. Super robot is rule of cool. This is what super robot always is.
It's not to say that super robot is style over substance, because very often there's a lot of substance in super robot shows, such as Code Geass. But yeah, absolutely. Some of my personal favorites, obviously the original, the Go Lion, the original Voltron show. I really like that show a whole bunch. It's very silly. It's just a bunch of lads fighting for the honor of this princess in this stupid transforming robot that looks like a big person with a human face. It's so stupid. And they made that Netflix show that doesn't look that good, but apparently people like it, which I should probably watch. And I really like, in the bottom right-hand corner there, Space Runaway Ideon. Space Runaway Ideon is very much a super robot show with real robot bones. It is anime by Kill 'Em All Tomino, as people like to call him, who we'll talk about in a few seconds. But it's a super robot show with super heavy humanistic themes, and I really like that show a lot. It's one of my personal faves. Speaking of Tomino, the lad, I think it's time that we go over to slide number 7. So, Kill 'Em All Tomino. Why do we call him that?
Segues. We truly
we're really known for our good segues. I'm fantastic at them. So Yoshiko Tomino is a guy who makes anime, but seemingly hates anime. Seemingly just hates his own creations a lot. He created Gundam, he created Ideon, he did a bunch of other stuff. I think he did Dalos, which no one remembers, but he did Dalos, I think. Maybe, don't quote me on that. I'm sure someone from Discotech is watching this, and they're very mad at me. So, he's really notorious for murdering characters, just butchering them, just destroying half of his cast, or waiting till just the right moment to kill off a key character. So, people often call him Yoshiyuki Kill 'Em All Tomino, because that's what he's known for.
I've never heard this in my life, but go on.
What, you haven't?
No, actually, I haven't.
Oh yeah, so people call him Kill 'Em All.
I thought he was always that man who makes people sad and or slaps them.
I mean, yeah, that's also true. But he's arguably, for the sake of this panel, for the importance of this panel, he's arguably the godfather of real robot anime. He created Mobile Suit Gundam, which I don't need to tell you what Gundam is. You know what Gundam is, but we're gonna actually talk about it here in a second. But he is a creator, I think, is best encapsulated by his response to Attack on Titan. A few years ago, he came out in an interview and said that he hates Attack on Titan, that he thinks it's comparable to pornography, and that he thinks it's like something like a schoolyard bully would make. He basically just took the creator of Attack on Titan to task and roasted him. And that's sort of what he's known for, being a salty lad, and we love him for it. So
Is Attack on Titan a super robot show?
Attack on Titan is a super bad show. That's what it is.
Okay.
So we're moving on to Tomino's creation. Slide number 8. I shouldn't list these slides. I'm really breaking the illusion here. I'm sorry, y'all. Russell, why don't you talk about Gundam a little bit? Give us a little bit of a primer about Gundam's origins.
Oh, you probably know the origins a little better than me, but
I need to take a sip of water.
Okay. Okay, I see how it is. Throw me to the wolves.
Yeah.
The robot wolves.
We just talked about Voltrons in the past. It's 2 slides ago.
Yeah. So Gundam kind of popped out of Tomino in about 79. We all pretty much know what it is, but it's a show about youth in the throes of war I wouldn't say space combat. War.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to say
Space
like
combat.
intergalactic, and I'm like, no, there's just one.
It's sort of nah, I guess you're right. It's all in one galaxy, right?
Yeah, it's Earthlings versus Space Noids.
Yes.
Yes.
Sure. Absolutely what that is.
I mean, it is what it is. Gundam is long and complex in a lot of ways. It's got a lot to say about war. Its main context is war is not good, and this is what it does to people.
Mm-hmm.
Which you will always lose when you watch G Gundam. But I'm going to just inject Preston. Preston always said that Gundam is always an example of what combat or the existence of weapons does in certain circumstances.
Yeah, totally.
As an example, he always said that Gundam Wing was, what was it? What would happen if these existed during a time of total peace?
Right.
Yeah. But Gundam also starts the trend of real robots in a big way of focusing on more of the characters than on the robots themselves. The robots are basically just set pieces that they use to move it around and sell merch. But it's all about the interactions of the characters, how they grow, how they build, how they interact with each other, and the opposing force. Is the opposing force actually evil? How does the opposing force feel about it? Because beforehand, your opposing force in a robot show was always like Dr. Hell, big vague eagle, big vague my tongue, big vague evil force that does a thing.
I thought you were going to say Lou Bega.
I mean, Mambo number 5. But it's always it's about the moral ambiguity of actual combat with the trappings of I like making a giant robot show, and it goes from there, and it's good.
Absolutely. It's very good.
And I rambled a lot.
No, you sounded really smart and very professional, which is not how I was sounding. I'm really proud of you. A+, S rank. No, so absolutely everything that Gundam just said, that Russell just said, is totally true. The one thing I wanted to mention just real quick, it's a complete sidebar, is that Gundam's timeline is a train wreck and it doesn't make any sense, and I don't care how many people try to explain it to me. Don't DM me, don't at me. Gundam has a bad timeline and it's super confusing. I really like it, but it's very dumb. There's a bunch of shows, they start off in this main continuity that's like, this is very gritty, this is very grounded, and then it just kind of goes, and then SD Gundam is a thing, and then G Gundam exists, and then Gundam Seed came out, and we don't talk about Gundam Seed.
Although I did see the Right Stuff panel yesterday, that redub and master actually looks kind of appealing in a way.
It really does, absolutely. Like, I think that
good, yeah.
I think for the purpose of that show, I honestly to God think that that's the release that show, deserves. There are people who really like Gundam Seed. I dunk on it a lot, but it's, good on them for putting it out. I like it. Yeah. Good stuff. Next slide. Let's do it.
Before we go next slide, actually.
Okay. What?
The timeline of Gundam isn't that weird. It's just shows take place out of order when they're produced. You know this.
Look, okay. Are you really really trying to explain the timeline to you right now?
No, I'm going to call out you out for always defending that MC Escher painting of a timeline that Macross has.
Macross's timeline makes perfect sense if you're on crack. Next panel. Next slide. Yeah, next panel. Just cancel our panel. No, so next slide. So Gundam was a hit. Gundam made a lot of money. It made so much money, just tons of it. So other studios took note of Gundam and were like, well, okay, can we do that? Can we make a real robot show? And it turns out a lot of them could, and some of them did it good, some of them did it bad. But that's the most important thing here that I think should be really focused on, is that Gundam was a hit for its quality. People did like it. People watched it. People went to go see the movies, all 3 of the compilation movies. People really liked the characters and the world. But Gundam, much like Macross, much like Macross's Western bastardization Robotech, it did well on the merits of selling model kits and toys. And I think that's the most important thing to focus on, because at the end of the day, that's what drives the anime industry, which is something we'll come back to towards the end of this panel. But Gundam sold a lot of model kits and was a success to the point where in the mid-production, the toy companies would come up with these new designs for different things to put on the Gundams and tell Tomino, you need to work this into the plot. And he was like, I hate this. I just want to write a sad story about people dying. But he did it anyway. And some of that stuff gets really confusing because he retcons it in the movie adaptations. So that gives you a glimpse of, I think, the inside of the production of how the sausage is made. So, as it were, the robot sausage of Gundam is that toy companies would be like, put this in the show. And they're like, I don't want to, but fine, sure, why not? So that's the important thing about Gundam. But wait, why did Gundam take off and resonate so well? You'll find that out on the next slide. Let's do it. So Gundam was a really useful show, I think, for the anime industry. Yes, that's a Kiss Anime watermark on that thumbnail. No, I don't care. So it introduced tropes that would later go on to kind of become commonplace in a real robot. You have this protagonist who's like, do I want to do the big fight or do I not want to do the big fight? I don't know. I'm sad now. You have these women who are super important to the plot, but often are relegated to a side supportive role for emotional relief and support. You have an older authoritarian male figure who will often slap the ever-loving heck out of the protagonist, so he'll get in a robot. And you have people who are like really, really good, nice guys that you like that die. And I think that's a hallmark of Real Robot, right? Is that there's always a really good person who dies.
Somewhere at some point in the story, something is going to kick you in the teeth very hard. That's kind of the point. It's just to show you that nothing is safe, because war is bad.
You think of that dude who dies in episode 7 or 8 of Gurren Lagann. Like, that's a really good example. Look, that show came out like 15 years ago. If you haven't seen it, you know about that, right? I hope I didn't spoil it for anyone. Whatever. So that's a good example. What's that character's name? Kamiya?
You mean the guy voiced by the guy doing the panel after us?
Oh, yeah. I haven't watched the dub, but I've heard it's really good.
It is.
I've only watched in Japanese.
And it's no one is really ever safe in a Real Robot show, because it's about the ambiguity of it. There is no cut and dry. You can't 100% tell what's going to happen, because even your protagonist might go. You're not really sure.
Right. And
I mean, it doesn't usually happen, but you know.
Somehow Amuro lives for a long time, and I don't think he should, because Amuro sucks. But that's the thing, right? You are watching OG Gundam, and you never know if this is going to be the episode where they kill off someone like Bright, who's the captain, slapping Amuro in this picture. You don't know if they'll kill off Amuro. You don't know if Sayla, who's the objectively best character in the show, objectively best girl, you don't know if she's going to die, right? You have no idea, and I think that's one of the big hallmarks. But Gundam was kind of, in a way, one of the major births of that, in as far as mech anime is concerned. There's a lot of moral.
Right.
What?
The chat is right. We forgot to mention new types.
We did forget to mention new types. I didn't make a slide about it. I'm very sorry.
So Gundam can, I'll say, original Gundam at the very least can sort of kind of go into that super territory at points, just because new types. Mm-hmm. But they're still very much real robots. It's just operating It's like Superman operating a robot. That nothing's gonna make sense.
That's a
Just
great
like
analogy.
Superman in the 90s having a mullet and a machine gun. Nothing makes sense.
That made perfect sense. They're super
No,
bullets. It's a
never.
super mullet.
No, never.
Absolutely. It's
It
good.
never
The mullet is
happened.
good. The mullet
Never
is
happened.
good, actually. Speaking of mullets, if y'all watch Gundam, y'all should watch way on until what's his name? Freaking the bad guy, the guy who sucks. Char. Char gets a mullet. It's really good. So yeah, Real Robot is defined by moral ambiguity, mopey protagonist, the call to action when you don't want to make the call to action, mechs as a utility. Gundam sort of kicked off a lot of those tropes, and even if it didn't necessarily invent a lot of them, Go Nagai had some elements of this in his manga. For the sake of the popularity of Real Robot, Gundam popularized those tropes, and I think that's really I think that's all that needs to be said about Gundam. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be said about Gundam, but for the purpose of this, that's it. So Gundam kicked off a lot of imitators and a lot of things that wanted to riff on that format. So in the next slide, we're going to talk about some of our favorites. Russell, why don't you start? I've been babbling.
Oh, I don't mind babbling. It's fine.
No, you go. You babble.
So some post Gundam favorites is where we are, I do believe.
Yeah.
You had things a lot like Pat Labor, the Mobile Police, which is, I mean, it's the police but with robots, basically.
Yeah.
It is what Pat Labor is at its core. The ins and outs of working around a world where that sort of thing can exist. So things being hacked, government secrets, etc.
Mhm.
You have Zabungle, which is What If Gundam but not space, and it. I think. Wait, I'm trying to remember. Wasn't the robot also like a truck in that one?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, it's been a while since I watched some Zabungle. It's just it's a notable example, but
I remember a bunch of kids on like hover sand bikes steal the big blue robot. That's
yeah,
mostly what I remember.
yeah, basically like in this in the promotional image I put in here. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And then
There's a
and then
lot of real robot. I will always go back to, for me, I'll always go back to Vodums.
yes,
Because Vodums to me is so, it's one man's quest to plunge through the moral ambiguity to find what the heck is going on with his existence.
hmm
And also, I've never, the complete and utter dissonance of a man being that much of a jerk all the time and being named Kiriko QV.
Kiriko QV.
I love Kiriko, but he's such an ass.
I just realized we could have called this show From Top to Bottom or Tops and Bottoms if for the late night version of this panel. But I'm really upset that we didn't.
And
Bottoms.
so they were both Bottoms.
So
Anyway.
they were both Bottoms. Bottoms is a good one. I really like Pat Labor a lot. Pat Labor is kind of what got me into mech anime back in the day. I watched the old Central Park Media releases of it when it came out, and I really, really enjoyed it a lot. It's by Mamoru Oshii. The original OVAs are anyway. The dude who directed Ghost in the Shell. And, it says right here in the slide. I should actually read the slides I made, shouldn't I? But my favorite example of Real Robot, and I know some people are going to get really mad. I don't care. Is Macross, which really started off as a Real Robot show. It started off in this society that they live in. They live in a society, you might say, where the military had these really cool planes, but they weren't just cool planes. They were planes with legs, but they weren't just planes with legs. They were robots. Macross is this really great example of a show that kind of normalized the idea of military utilization of mechs in a similar way that Gundam did. So while Pat Labor is what if cops had robots, Macross is what if the army had robots and also mind controlling singing. And as it went on, Macross got significantly less real robot based and really got a lot more super robot to the point where Macross 7 has magic sound waves that defeat vampires that suck the soul out of your body that also live in space. It's really bad, but really good. So I would say Macross is a personal example and a personal favorite of Real Robot for me. Speaking of post Gundam mech anime, a little guy, a big guy, a prolific guy named Hideaki Anno made this sort of hybrid real robot, super robot show called Gunbuster. But he also made something else. Let's talk about Hideaki Anno in the next slide. So, Hideaki Anno, the lad, the absolute unit. Hideaki Anno started off as an animator who worked at Studio Ghibli. He did some work on Nausicaa. He did some in-between frames. In Nausicaa, he was responsible for the big monsters that you see at the beginnings designs, I believe. He and Miyazaki have been personal friends for ages. They go on romantic trips to France together. I'm not even kidding. He started up with his friends a fan animation group that would be known as Gainax. Gainax would go on in the 80s to not only make these really good kind of fan-made short anime, but they would go on to make really prolific hits like Gunbuster, and they would go on to make Otaku no Video, which is a personal favorite of mine. They would go on to make Wings of Honi Amise, which is really good up until the really bad sexual assault scene. They made a lot of really good stuff. And Anno was behind a lot of their most popular, prolific works. During the time he worked on Nadia, Secret of the Blue, he started falling into a very deep depression because NHK, which is for all intents and purposes like the PBS equivalent of Japanese television, I don't know what the equivalent here would actually be, but they had a lot of stringent guidelines about what he could and couldn't do in the show. He, as an artist, felt like the corporate pressure of him working on a show was like too much, and he sort of broke him. It sort of made him really, really, really depressed. He fell into a severe 4-year depression after making Nadia, and then he got a chance to make a show about, well, let's see. Let's just go to the next slide. What's the show called again? A little show, everyone knows it. Yeah, Shinji, the world's saddest boy. That's it. That's the show, right? Is that the name, Russell?
I think that. No, wait, that doesn't sound just quite right.
It doesn't sound quite right. Let's try the next slide.
Yeah, that's it. That's
it. Evangelion, or as I like to call it, Leering at teens with robots. Hey, Russell, I know Evangelion is your favorite talking point, so why don't you talk about it? Because I have to take a sip of water.
Am I a mirror to you? No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh my god, where do I even begin? Evangelion or Evangelion. Right, I've never known the proper pronunciation. Evangelion is kind of it, like Bella said. It's a hybrid. It's the bones and emotional area of Real Robot cranked up to about 18,000, plus the action and kind of reality-defying. I don't know what of a super robot.
Yeah,
consistently and constantly escalating to a crescendo of madness.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary, right?
That's a very vague and good summary, but yes.
Evangelion, my girlfriend very succinctly described it as a real robot show in which the twist is that it wasn't a real robot show at all. It's a show in which you think these military vehicles are military vehicles, and then halfway through, it turns out they're ancient god monsters with armor on them. I've watched the show 4 or 5 times, and it's still...
And surprisingly white teeth.
And surprisingly white teeth that they use to eat things. It's really cool. It's really appetizing to watch them eat, isn't it?
Oh, it's like me after a week of not eating going to KFC, yeah.
Absolutely. It's me anytime I go to KFC. So Evangelion, I think Russell put it very succinctly, is that it combined both the elements of Super and Real Robot into one cohesive package. This show was originally broadcast on a children's television time slot in Japan. And it starts off as a mech show, and so you would think, this is fine. This is a good thing for the little kiddos to watch. As it goes on, you realize that it's about depression. It's about sort of like parental abuse, not even sort of parental abuse. It's about how you would cope if you had to pilot a giant robot after your mom killed herself. It's really bleak. It's really bleak stuff. And Anno sort of unleashed it on an unsuspecting populace. And he's an absolute unit for that, in my opinion.
That is actually the best approach to do it.
Absolutely. The whole show is very preoccupied with adolescent sexuality. It's very preoccupied with the idea of seeking parental approval. And it's also Anno working through his depression in animation form. And as the show lost its money and the animation got progressively worse, you can sort of tell that Anno was drifting in his own head. And then we got episodes 25 and 26, which are just weird stream of consciousness animation broadcast for kids and, giving kids trauma. It's like Candle Cove, but with robots. You might notice there are no robots in this slide. I don't know how that happened. I just put 4 pictures of the best character in the show on here. I'm really sorry, y'all. Let's move on to the next slide.
And so it shows through.
So, just to recap, Evangelion took these 2 genres and they married them together. It took Super Robot and Real Robot, and was like, these are the same. These things can coexist. These things can be one and the same. They can be 2 sides of the same coin. And I think that is ultimately Evangelion's most lasting impact on mech anime, is that it showed that you can always walk that delicate tightrope of the crazy, unrealistic super robot stuff and the grounded military utility vehicle real robot stuff, and throw in a bunch of like trauma and the people slapping and the bad times, the bad psychological breakdowns. You can have all of that. You can have your cake and eat it too. And that's sort of why I like Evangelion so much as a show.
The isolation, the beer, the elevator scene, the screaming, everything.
Absolutely.
All at once. Forever.
It's so good. It's such a good show. I try not to gush about Evangelion because it's so rote and passé to say Evangelion is good at this point, but Evangelion is in fact a very good show. And it did a lot for marrying these 2 genres, and I think in a way popularizing them to the West. Evangelion was one of the first big like 90s booms in Western anime fandom, and that's huge because we wouldn't have the fandom that allowed this con to happen today if Evangelion had not come out in those 2-episode VHS tapes that cost $60 million. So yeah, it changed the whole medium as well. It really kicked off this fantastic decade where every anime suddenly was preoccupied with philosophy and psychology and was really, really depressing. Evangelion's popularity, I think, is why we were able to get stuff like Serial Experiments Lane and Technolize and Razafon. Okay, actually, that's a bad thing that we got Razafon, but I digress. It kicked off a huge trend in terms of style and substance in the medium, and I think its impact is still being felt today, to the point where we still talk about the show like it's a new thing constantly.
Oh, Ava is in a way to robots what just God, I'm trying to figure out what the comparison I was about to use is. No, I don't have one. Never mind. Ignore me.
Oh, I would never.
I was going to say it's kind of like the Dragon Ball of robots, but then I went, no, Dragon Ball started a thing. Ava just recontextualized the thing.
Yeah,
so never mind.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, right? What would be the shonen recontextualization? What would be the Evangelion to like the Dragon Ball? Like, would that be My Hero Academia? Would that be an apt example?
I don't know.
Yuck.
I mean, let's okay. Here, let's put it this way.
What?
Even though it's completely passe, Ava's to robots what Madoka is to magical girls.
Yeah, there we go. There we absolutely go. You nailed it. Why did I have like tons of Madoka figurines upstairs? I don't know why I didn't just go to that.
I mean, I don't know why. And mine are just in storage, so I don't know what you're doing.
Look. God, Madoka. God, why didn't I pitch a panel about Madoka? Oh well.
Yeah.
Next slide. So, 2 sides of the same bot. Yeah, that's a really bad slide title. I'm really sorry, except I'm not. So, Evangelion kind of exposed mech anime for what it is ultimately. It's a chance for us to all look at robots and go, robots are really cool and good. And whether it's a robot that was, birthed in some underground cave from a mad scientist, or a robot that is made as a military utility vehicle for cops to use, robots are all just really cool, right? That's
they are. Robots are some of the best expressions of like actual just character creation and overall artistic expression that you can find, because you don't have to be limited by like human features. As an example, you can make it have 2 eyes, you can make it have 100 eyes, you can have it have no legs, it can shoot a laser out of its chest or out of its shoulders. It doesn't matter, just make it how you want it. It is artistically infinite, except for the fact that it almost no, it doesn't even have to look mechanical. It can look biological too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like you think of stuff like
Blue.
I think it's Blue Gender that has like really cool looking, organic looking robots. I like Blue Gender a lot.
I think Guyver has some pretty good looking stuff too.
Yeah, Guyver. Guyver is like a weird blend of robot and tokusatsu in one thing, which is really cool. But no, robot mech shows ultimately, whether you're going down the Pat Labor gritty Gundam route or you're going down the G Gundam, like as you mentioned earlier, Promare route, mech anime, regardless of its context, is about selling you toys. It's about selling you expensive pieces of disposable plastic that you pay entirely just too much money for. When you're taking out that second mortgage to buy a really cool bunch of Gundam model kits, that's the heart and soul of what mech anime is about. Because at the end of the day, the characters, the writing, the themes, those are all something that the writers and directors put their heart and soul into. And they do it in service of an industry that just wants to sell us plastic things. And I think that's what's really cool about mech anime, is it could just be cheap, disposable entertainment. Instead, mech anime is a cornerstone of when you think of anime, you think of giant robots, right? And that's what's so cool about it. Whether you're doing it in a grounded, realistic way or a very unrealistic way, it's all in service of selling you things. And that's impressive because that could go entirely wrong, in the wrong hands. For the past several decades, the anime industry has produced some fantastic shows, even as recently as like Darling in the Franxx, which is one of my more recent favorite shows.
Oh yeah, you're just going to set the comments on fire with that one.
Yeah, people don't like that show for some reason, and they're wrong. It's really good. 02 is incredibly cute. She eats meat with honey on it. Like, what more do you want? What more do you want? She has a fang. Girls with fangs are cute. Anyway.
Oh, and there goes the pure motives. Anyway.
And there it goes.
Yeah.
So anyway.
No,
robot shows are all about selling you things. And, as Wint would put it, on this bitch of an earth, buying robot toys is really good, and we should do it to make ourselves feel better about the state of the world. So that's basically what Real Robot is. It's grittier robot anime. It's a little more realistic. I know I probably should have picked some examples as like more recent than Gurren Lagann, but I'm very lazy. Let's go on to the next slide. If you didn't want to kill me by the end of this panel, I'm Bella. You can follow me at Bella Blondo on Twitter. I post a lot of bad content, but sometimes it's pretty good.
And I'm Russell. You can follow me on Twitter at Altered Ego. It has 2 underscores. I post occasionally, but it's mostly just retweets of things I find enjoyable.
He should post more. I miss it when he posts.
I
miss it when he posts.
I can't write long form anymore. It's too tiring.
180 characters. Wait, is that the limit now still? 180? 180 characters.
240?
I tweet every day. I should know this. Anyway,
whatever it is.
And you might notice a third name on this slide. It's Preston. He couldn't be here with us. I gave him some guff earlier, but he's a good guy, and he was one of the impetuses for me going, maybe you guys should watch some Gundam. You can follow him at Robotechnology. Really, really cool guy. One of our best friends. So I don't know. That's basically all I have to say. I just realized that we babbled for 40 minutes. It feels like I've been talking for 15 minutes, and I'm sure to you it feels like 2 hours. Do we have any questions at all? Like anyone want to ask anything?
Let's see. Does anyone? Let's see.
Yeah, we'll see if anybody has any questions. I'm curious as to how there's 2 of you and neither of you know how Twitter works.
Look.
Wait, what?
I know how Twitter works.
Okay. You both got the character count wrong.
Okay. I forget numbers sometimes. Wait, it's 360, isn't it?
No.
I don't remember.
That's not it at all. That's an Xbox. A 360 is an Xbox, Russell.
It's 280. It used to be 140.
Okay.
Okay. Wow, I'm
Get off my case. I'm tired.
Are you tired? I've slept for 4 hours. Okay.
I did a similar.
Oh,
Peter,
well, I did it last night, so I did it first.
Okay. We have a. Do we have any questions?
we got a
at
couple
all?
questions. Peter Wright says, "What is the future of real robots? Is it getting to be less?"
Russell,
I
you want to take
feel-
this one?
Yeah. I feel like, unfortunately, Real Robot has a lot less place in the current mindset of anime as an industry for several reasons. Part of which is I feel overall, from an aesthetic standpoint, at the very least, Real Robot lends itself much better to deliberate hand painted cell animation. It gives it much more of like a realistic kind of deliberate clunky feel, or just more mechanical. And everything we have, so much of what we have now is very large swath, actiony, Sakuga filled, and Real Robot doesn't fit that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like it's, from a writing standpoint, a lot of people tend to not want to do that sort of thing these days.
Yeah.
If they want to do something drama based, they tend to do it from a more, they want to, budget is always very important. So they'd rather focus on just characters themselves than a lot of set pieces that the characters would be in.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a shame, because you can do drama even better in magnificent, wonderful set pieces, in my opinion, but it's all due to what people want to write. And if no one wants to write it, no one wants to write it at the time.
And it also, the thing that I mentioned earlier holds
Yes.
true here is that it's it's industry trends. If more like Pat Labor-esque anime is not doing well, then that they're not going to make it. And that's I would agree with Russell. I think that Real Robot anime is getting less. I think that we're seeing less of it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But certainly, I would like to see more stuff like old school Macross and Pat Labor and Zabungle. So yeah, I think it's getting less, but I don't necessarily know if that's a bad thing or a good thing. We've still gotten some really good mech anime in recent years.
Yeah, we are currently in an era where if we get robot stuff, it's more often than not super, or revamps of super. Like what was it? A year or the year before was the year of our Lord and Savior Gonagai.
Yeah,
where we got that Mazinger movie that was, I mean, plot wise was, it's 70s, but like the action was really, really good.
Yeah.
Like, we'll get stuff. It'll come back around at some point. It just has to be an overarching desire and willingness to put forth the money to make it.
And I think I'm not going to
capitalism.
get too into sad things here, but I will say,
Yeah.
given the state of the world, it would not surprise me if a gritty, sad robot anime came out sometime in the next few years, and then everybody started making that. That's all I'm going to say. Do we have any other questions?
The chat got very crazy. I looked down for 1 second, and
It's my fault. I'm controversial.
Let's see. Here's a longer one. This is a comment from Princess Ozaline. I would say that Macross still stays most on the real side of things, even in 7. Aside from Sound Force, the rest of the robots are military tools, and Proto-Devlin, I don't know what any of these things mean. I'm so sorry. Aren't
No, absolutely.
Well, it's not a question. It's
aren't
not a
straight.
question.
I'm not familiar with the franchise, so like, what am I reading?
It's my favorite mech series.
The Proto-Devlin aren't straight up
All
bad
questions
guys
are valid.
despite
All of them.
appearing to be at first. It marries some super robot and magical girl stuff as it goes on, but I think it's still real-ish.
That's a really good point. I think it is a bit reductionist for me to say that it became a super robot show. I think it would be more accurate for me to say that it has real robot bones with a lot of magical trappings happening around it. So you have stuff like the anima spiritua alien vampires that happen in 7. You have a lot of the weird magical pop idol stuff in Delta, which I adore. Delta is probably my favorite Macross show. Maybe it's 7. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's certainly true, and that's good for pointing that out. That was a pretty reductionist way for me to summarize Macross.
I've only seen Do You Remember Love, so
That's a good one to see. It's a good movie.
I see this question, which makes the real question is, how much longer can Sunrise milk Universal Century as well as making Gundam clones?
Forever.
Well, here's my answer. They tried making something that was not labeled Gundam, and that's when we got Valvrave, so they're kind of shy about that right now.
Yeah, Valvrave the Liberator.
Yeah, Valvrave was good.
Oof.
Look,
MarioOof.wav.
Sunrise has other properties they can make use of. I know sometime I think it was this year or next year, we're getting a new season of Tiger and Bunny finally. So
Finally.
they realize they have to do something other than Gundam once in a while.
Christ, we get new Tiger and Bunny.
I'm sorry, Ragnar. I know it's bad. I'm sorry, but how do I put this? Will they branch out? Yes, I think they. I think they will. I think they know they have to because it takes a lot of time to make new model kits and plots, and there's got to be something to fill that void in general.
Totally. There's a question I want to answer if we have time to answer this one.
You have 10 minutes.
What's your favorite? Okay, good. What's your favorite guilty pleasure Real Robot series? That comes at us from Spirakin. Thanks, Spirakin. I'll answer first. So you know how I said that Macross 7 and Delta are my favorite Macross shows? They're also huge guilty pleasures. Macross 7 is incredibly stupid. It's just the dumbest thing I've ever watched. It's just pants on head dumb. And it's about this boy with a guitar who just sings in his robot to aliens, and that's supposed to kill them, but he doesn't want to kill them. He thinks war is bad, but he wants to hurt them with sound waves. He wants them to listen to his song, which is his catchphrase, and convert them to being parts of society. That's what Macross is all about at the end of the day. It's about like music being the bonding force between different cultures and us all coming together and not fighting. Much like Gundam, Macross is a very pro-peace, anti-war anime. So Macross 7, that's one of my favorite Macrosses, but also a huge guilty pleasure. Russell?
I feel no guilt. No. A guilty pleasure, was it Real Robot Show?
It just says robot show in general, I think.
A guilty pleasure robot show. I'm not sure if I have any ones that I've watched that I would call a guilty pleasure. Well, I mean, G Gundam is my pleasure in general.
Russell, come on here.
G Gundam is my pleasure in general, but I feel no guilt. Robot shows don't make me feel guilt.
Maybe if you
things we would talk about in our later panel make me feel guilt.
True.
I don't know. I'm pretty guilty for watching the Knights of Ramune OVA.
Knights of Ramune is good. Actually.
Okay, here, I'll put it this way: if you can count it as robot, even though I think it's just Power Suit, which wouldn't count. I feel pretty bad for every single time I've ever laid my eyes on Mars of Destruction.
Oh,
but I don't know if you'd ever count that.
That's not a guilty pleasure, Russell. That's guilty of war crimes.
That's I need to get a second therapist, is what that is.
Mars of Destruction deserves to be arrested for YouTube crimes.
Oh no, it does. It does.
Absolutely.
It's so bad. I otherwise I don't feel guilty about watching robot shows ever.
Yeah. Same. Guilty pleasures? Look.
Well,
chase your bliss. Chase your bliss. Let's see. What else we got going on here in the chat? People are talking about Cross Angie, Cross Ange. That show's pretty good. I liked it. I'm Gojira's wife in the chat, by the way. That's me. That show's good. I like it. That's what people are talking about now in the chat. Do we have any more like actual questions before we?
A lot of these are comments.
A lot of these are comments. But yeah,
Thriller.
I don't know.
That's it.
I think we can call it. Here. You feel good about that, Russell?
Yeah, I'm totally good with that.
You cool with that, John Paul?
I'm fine with that. We can go to break a little early. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was a pleasure. You will be with us again tonight for our final panel. It is a kink shamers and hentai panel, I believe.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about all. Our podcast is usually pretty not safe for work. I've dropped like one swear word this entire time. Usually that's like the only other word. Like every other word that comes out of my mouth is just me fucking. Oh, it's just me cursing. There,
you did so well.
I did so good.
You did so well.
But it's going to be a panel.
Proud of you.
Hey, almost. Okay.
Okay,
thanks,
in this
buddy.
instance.
Thanks, pal. Anyway, it's going to be a panel about different tropes in hentai, some of my personal favorites, just different weird little kinks that show up in hentai. Y'all should check it out. It'll probably be pretty fun, I think. We probably won't get thrown off of Twitch.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
We're prepared for it. So thank you so much. You two have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.